Okay, today we're going to be talking about the Industrial Revolution. It began in the 1700s in Europe, and it slowly made its way across the ocean to the United States. Up until the late 1700s, most all goods were produced mainly by hand, meaning that people in small workshops, barns, small shops would build the machines or the day-to-day necessities by hand. They would produce the materials to build these resources by hand. So the Industrial Revolution was mainly a revolution in the way that goods were produced. It revolutionized that process of producing all goods. And it also vastly changed the way that people worked and lived. It started to pull people from their rural settings, from their farms, into the city where the factory jobs could be found. So this also led to other issues in the city structures.
That brought about huge changes in the way that people lived. That was the time when fast, power-driven machines started to do work that up until that time had only been done by human hands. It was when the first big factories were built to house workers and the machines they operated. It was when the production of manufactured goods increased dramatically. When the lives of human beings first started to be regulated by clocks and factory bells. It was also when rural populations declined as people headed to factories to find steady work. When cities rapidly grew, and when pollution of the environment began to occur on a massive scale. Taken together, these events started the world's first industrial revolution.
Okay, so you can see that not all of the advances as part of the Industrial Revolution were positive. It also brought along with it a lot of negative effects. Changes in production. These factories that were being built were the home base for a lot of large machines. They took all the different processes of assembling the goods and moved them into one building and created large machines to create to streamline this process of creation of goods. The machines worked faster and harder than the humans. They could work a lot longer. The jobs you used to have where a dozen or so humans would be working on this one project, you could now put a machine to that job and have roughly 1 to 2 people to run that machine. So now you can run the machines in shifts and create goods round the clock because the machines did not need smoke breaks. They didn't need to stop and eat. Didn't need to stop to go to the bathroom. So the machines could work all the time and have people running them in shifts. It allowed for goods to be made at a much quicker pace, and it also decreased the cost of producing goods because you could churn more goods out a lot faster, so you were making more money in the process. Many new inventions of the time were improving the factory system, improving the way that goods were being made and the types of machines that were designed to do these jobs. So many of these inventions were coming around at that time. The one that kicked it all off was the cotton gin, which was built by Eli Whitney, which made it easier for the cotton farmers to process the cotton and produce cotton more quickly. This also led to improvements in agriculture. So at this time, people were using a lot of these technologies and these machines on their farms to increase their productivity and increase the amount of time it took them, or decrease the amount of time it took them to get the crops planted and then harvest the crops. At this same time, there was a lot of societal changes, so the way that people were living was changing. By the 1900s, most products were produced in factories. In US and Western Europe, most of the goods being produced were produced in factories. A lot of these inventions from these factory systems started to make their way into everyday life, easing the day-to-day life of most people. The move from the rural settings into the cities had to improve transportation because these people had to get to work on time and get to work easily. So the transportation infrastructure, the roads, the cable cars, the trains, the trolleys, and a lot of these things were being improved at the same time so people could get around easier. Communication. At the time, communication was improving and it allowed people to get in touch instantly instead of having to send messages, send wires, send telegrams. People could now pick up their phones and communicate instantly. But not all the change was good. The agriculture, one person was able to do more farming, so this decreased the number of farmers. So fewer people were farming more land, but it caused these people to lose their land and have to move into the city to take these factory jobs, which more people in the city leads to overcrowding, brings disease, and the cities became overpopulated and very dirty very quickly.
When the Industrial Revolution began in England, the earliest textile factories employed many young children and paid them almost nothing. But that changed in America because by the mid-1800s, 8 out of every 10 workers in the textile factories were unmarried women between the ages of 15 and 30. Most of them had left behind quiet lives on isolated farms for the adventure of working in a city and earning a steady wage. The conditions were not good in the textile factories, but they did improve over time. The machines tended to be extremely loud and dangerous to operate. The hours were long. The work was quite monotonous, and the air in the factories was filled with tiny bits of fiber that damaged the workers' lungs. The wages were low as well. The mill girls, as they were called, earned less than $3 for putting in a 6-day, 60-hour work week, while men got $1 more a week for doing the same jobs. The lives of the mill girls were almost completely controlled by the factories where they worked. For example, right across the street from this textile factory are the company-owned boarding houses where they slept and ate their meals. Here, the girls were carefully supervised and followed a strict curfew, but they were provided with respectable surroundings that were often more comfortable than those they had known back on the farm. However, as the 19th century rolled on, unskilled factory jobs began to be filled more and more often by recent immigrants to America instead of farm girls. Such jobs provided many immigrant families with a reliable income with which to start their new lives.
Okay, here's an example of some children hard at work at their factory jobs. And if you notice, the man doesn't look so dirty or tired, probably because he was charged with making sure that these young men stayed to their task. So you can tell the boys look fairly tired, a little bit dirty. You see his hands. These two boys maybe just standing in the background, taking a break for a second while this photograph was taken. But you can see it's an environment where a lot of machines moving around, children were often hurt, lots of loss of limbs, and that's part of the reason why they were employing children. They figured that it's a little less costly to lose a child than an adult. Government was also changing at this time. The practice of imperialism was coming into view. The late 1800s was called the Age of Imperialism. This was a time when Europe and the United States were heading into Africa and Southeast Asia and taking, basically by force, towns and villages where resources and labor were plentiful, and they were employing those people and taking those resources for their own gain in their industry.